and welcome to Bolshevik News. Guys, something a little bit different, and that's because of the response in the last video with regards to a lot of people asking me to go over the universal equation. So, I'm more than happy to do that. A little bit later on in the week, we'll be pulling the SD cards out of the TriMag and the magnetosphere sensor, and we'll be processing that data and getting that up on or around about the 14th or the 15th. A little bit later on, like I say, this week. Big thank you to those people that have supported us on PayPal and Patreon, and a little bit later on in this video, in the comment section, I'm going to make a few personal thank yous to those guys for that. And if you'd like to support what we do on this channel and our observatory, then the link will be down there in the description as well. So like I say, guys, we've got a lot to talk about in this video. And it's not that the universal equation is a difficult concept to understand. It's very simple, and but there is a little bit of groundwork we want to cover, just so that you get the not just get the grasp of how the equation works. And look, there's not going to be any scientific symbols involved in this. It really is as simple as adding and taking away numbers. Some might say a little bit of numerology involved in this, but it's just the way we filter down any numbers that represent anything, so that we can get the last result in that filter. So what I'm saying is that by using this equation, we will get one of two outcomes, or two numbers, and that'll be a 9 or a 0, and I'll explain what the significance of that is, and you'll really grasp the importance of this equation, because there isn't another equation anywhere like it. And there's a bit of a unique story as to how I came about that, and maybe a bit later on in this video I'll explain to you and just describe how that came about and how I come to the knowledge of this. But I've spent a lot of research and time going over a lot of things, guys, and it has led to some of my beliefs now on what all this is about, and really what this universal equation represents. So I do believe that you'll be taking something massive away from this, and if you really get it, I'm not going to spell it out, but you should be satisfied at least about something that's taking place in our universe, and it's not by any mistake at all. It is all, as you've probably been told before, but never been explained in the manner which I'm going to do. It is all by design, and it can be comforting for some people to know that there is something great out there in our universe, which is an immense size, that is taking place, has been taking place for millions and millions of years, and it is almost as though it follows a design or a plan, a great plan. And with that, I think it's about time we get into some of the concepts then, or some of the footwork or the groundwork, so that we can then build on that, and you'll understand what this is all about. So let's do that. So guys, are you ready? Take a deep breath, and just bear this in mind. What I'm about to show you in the coming minutes of this video, and I hope that you do stay to the end, because really I want you to get it. I want you to really get it. But what you're going to be shown in this video is probably something that's been kept a secret for, at least to my knowledge, thousands and thousands of years. And there are some entities out there, and probably pockets of organisations, that would hate the fact that I have showed you this and given you this information free, like I'm about to do. They would not like it. Some of this has probably been kept secret for millions, well, no, not millions, that'd be an exaggeration, but at least, to my knowledge, thousands of years. It goes back, way back, to old Abydos in Egypt, and some of those temples of Osiris, at least. So, yes, as you can see, we're looking at Metatron's cube, and we can see the 7 or 6 main platonic shapes. And I like this version of Metatron's cube because it also incorporates in the centre the flower of life, and I'll show you a few different variations of that later on. But basically, it's all geometry, and geometry is mathematics, plays a big part in mathematics, because all these shapes are variations of mathematical formulas. And don't get feeling at this moment that this is all going over your head, you might not understand it, but pretty much simple as this. These shapes on the 7 circles that you're looking at form part of the geometry, and if we took a circle and just decided to make a mark every 5 degrees around that circle and then draw a line, we would end up with a picture eventually. If we used a compass, we would end up with a picture. And we would probably, if we carried on, end up with something that looks like this Metatron's cube. So the fact I want you to grasp right here is that numbers can form shapes, and shapes can form objects of any sorts. And science has got to a level now that we can write out an equation for anything. It doesn't even have to be solid things. It can be thermal chemical equations. So just talking about temperature, we can apply numbers of temperatures, and we can do equations with temperatures, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't have to be just the physical. It can be non-physical. It can be gases, solids, it can be molecules. It doesn't make any difference. At the end of the day, guys, what we've got to realise at this point is that we can convert that geometry into a number, and then if we get the number out of it, then we can convert that number through the universal equation, and we can filter it down to just 2 things. Now, I've got to this level of using the universal equation where I understand it's a binary system of numbers. Anytime you work something down to a binary, and I'll explain just briefly what a binary is if people don't know what it is, you get just either an on or an off. It could be a 1 or a 0, as is in most of the cases now when you're transferring digital into audio and video. In most cases, those CD-ROMs that you put in CD players or DVDs are all written in binary, and what that means is it's either a series of zeros and then some ones and then some more zeros and then more ones, and it goes on and on and on. Strand of ones and zeros broken up into different sections, with different quantities of zeros and ones separating them. It's how those optical readers in these DVD players work. They work by reading the binary in that CD or DVD. But the point is this: is that our universe is operating on a very similar system. If we take this a little bit further. So if we want to apply a mathematical formula to the geometry of a tree, or just the twig, not even the biggest part of the branch, we can do that. We can apply, in the same way, if we look at the human DNA chain, the double helical shape, we can apply geometry to that shape. We can understand that it's a double helix, and we can apply a mathematical formula to it. When we start applying mathematical formulas, we start applying numbers eventually, and when we get numbers that represent objects, we can then chuck that into the universal equation and break it down into its binary number. What I've not done is worked out the binary decode. So I sometimes think it's a bit like watching that film Contact with Jodie Foster in it. They get a message from outer space, but they don't understand the primer, and the primer is the key concept to decoding the rest of it. It's very difficult with the universal equation to build blocks of 9s and 0s and then work out what they are. So that is the point and the level at which I'm at. But I'm not disappointed at being at this level right now, guys, because I understand the concept of what the universal equation is. It is the filtering of larger numbers down into just 2 numbers. Those numbers are 9s and 0s. And there are many things and many great people have talked about such numbers as 9s, 3s and 6s, to mention one, Nikola Tesla. He even commented that if you could break down the understanding of the numbers 3, 6 and 9, you would understand everything there is to understand about our universe, and I absolutely think that's 100% true. The other thing is that as we're talking about a universal system of numbers, we must be talking about how we write the symbols of these numbers down. Now, just because we understand, there is a symbol for a number 1, a symbol for a number 2, and it goes up to 9, and then we have a 0, and we can then go beyond 9, we can have 10, which is a 1 and a 0. It doesn't mean that, even on our planet, that there is other symbols for numbers. The Mayans had different symbols to what we use today. China, I believe, has different symbols in Mandarin, and there are different symbols even in use today, as well as in our history. So it doesn't really matter whether we're using different symbols. Like I said in the video before this one, if we have a number 3 that represents 3 objects, then it doesn't matter that in another language they will have a symbol that represents 3 in their language. If we understand what their symbols mean, we'll understand that we're all talking about the same thing, numbers and amounts of things. And it isn't just the case that on Earth there are little oceans that separate continents that have these different symbols, and it doesn't just mean that because we are separated by space, and planets are separated by space, which could be considered just another scale of oceans. The point is that if we travelled to another world, they would have different symbols, and it is for this manner that you've probably heard the expression that mathematics is a universal language. But the point is this, is that no matter where you are in this universe, what planet you're on, and let's face it, it's pretty ignorant for us to think that we're the only ones in this world. Maybe on this world, but if we look further afield at into other galaxies, there are millions and millions of stars even in our own galaxy, and just because we haven't discovered intelligent life forms on those planets yet, or maybe some of us would say some of us haven't, and I'm not saying that I have, but I have had some encounters in life which have been pretty unusual, and I've seen a few things which have been unexplainable. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. That's the main point. And it doesn't mean that they won't be using different symbols. So, mathematics is a universal language. So, how long has the universal conscious, as I like to call it, been using an intelligent source of mathematics? Pretty much from day one is the answer. And the fact that this universe creates in an intelligent way should tell you guys that it is conscious. And if it is conscious and intelligent, then I'll just leave you to figure out the rest. But let me show you the equation that proves that fact. We've already talked about the fact that if everything can have a number applied to it through its geometry, then we can put that number into this equation and break it down into its binary numbers. And as I've said already, just because we don't understand how to put the numbers together in the binary system at this point, doesn't mean that it is not the case. That this universe is actually creating on those lines. So let's have a little look at the equation. It's not too difficult. I'm pretty sure you'll get the grasp of it very quickly. You'll be practicing probably with it very quickly. But more importantly, let's have a look at a few other things which relate to it. And if you like, we'll look at a few things which have related at least for thousands of years on this planet. So let's have a look at the equation then. Okay, so let's take our first look at the universal equation. Now, it's not complex mathematics. A child could do this very easily once they understand the sequence of filtering the numbers down till we get the binary. Like I say, even a child could pick this up. As you can see, there are 2 examples, and we'll start with the one at the top, which gives us the binary number 9, and then we'll talk about how we obtain the binary number 0 at the bottom in the second example. So, the first number can be any number at all. Let's just say, for argument's sake, this number is the answer that gives us from looking at a geometric shape or a form of geometry. It could be anything. What I'm saying is, if we have on one hand an equation for a square cube, yeah, and then on the other hand we've got the number that represents that cube at the end of the equation, then this is the number we could use. But then it could be anything at all. It could be a number that represents a gas, a plasma, or a solid. Anything at all. So in this case we have the number 78546. What we've done then is we've reversed the number, so we've got 64587. And then what you would do normally in maths is, if you had two numbers like this, the top number here and the bottom number here, and you wanted to subtract one of them, you would subtract the lower number from the top. So when you do that, if you put in the calculator 78546 and then the number that you're going to take away from this number, in this case it is the 64587, you would then press equals and you would get the answer 13959. The next stage in the universal equation is further filtering of the number. And the way in which we do that is we just simply add all these numbers in the equation that we've got before that together in this term. So 1 plus 3 plus 9 plus 5 plus 9 gives us the answer 27. And this is just this number broken down, but all the numbers here have been added up individually. We then do it again. So 2 plus 7 equals 9, and this is the first binary number. And like I said, it doesn't matter which number you choose, it's either going to give you one of two numbers. It's either going to give you a number 9 or a number 0. And in the second example here, we can see how we get a number 0 when the top number is subtracted from the exact same number, because if you reverse 2002 backwards like we did in this case up here, you're going to end up with 2002. And if you take 2002 away from 2002 or subtract them, you're going to end up with 0. And that's the second number in the binary system. And this is just what a binary system of numbers looks like. So, you've had your first look at the universal equation. Hopefully you find it not too difficult to recreate with different numbers, but let's just apply some numbers to some geometry, in this case the flower of life. There's a good reason why I've put the numbers in the positions that they're in, but you can see on the opposite of the numbers, I've written down the sides here, but you can see there's an 8, a 9, 1, 2, 3, 4 going round in the inner cube, if you like. If you look at the picture, you can see that there's two cubes, but the one cube in the centre has the corner removed, and you can see the flower of life. It's almost like, it's drawing our attention to this, and there's a good reason for this, and I'll show you in another picture in a minute, which you can go back later to this and just see why the numbers I've written down the sides are the way they are. But if you add 8 and 1, you get 9. The 7 is opposite the 2. If you add those two numbers together, you get 9 again, and 6 plus 3 is 9, and 5 plus 4 is 9. And there isn't another way of arranging it on the flower of life where you obtain that geometry of the cube in the centre with the corner missing out, so you can peer almost into it to see it. But why did I do this? Because I was looking at something else I come across. It was a crop circle that was put down in Wiltshire, and I'll just give you a quick look at that. But just remember these numbers at the side here. You've got 4 times 9 equals 36. 4 times 36 equals 144. And at the bottom you can see I've broke down the 144 similar as I did do in the universal equation to get the 9. I've added the individual numbers of 144. Obviously they make 9. These are interesting numbers because they appear everywhere, guys. Just for instance, if you look in the back of Revelations in the King James Bible, you'll note that there's a mention of the 144. It's an unusual number, so why was it chosen? Maybe there are some codes to that Bible. Maybe some numbers was put in that Bible for a reason. And if you read Revelations, you might come across more than one coincidence, let's say. Now, you might remember what I was talking about with coincidences. If they are there, then they are facts and therefore not coincidences. So there may be, as Isaac Newton was trying to find out many, many years ago, an actual code to the Bible. I know, for instance, that at one point in Revelations, it's almost as though what they're talking about in Revelations is talking about this pattern. Now, I found this pattern in an unusual place. Like I said, some of this information might go back as far as the old city of Abydos in the Temple of Osiris, because they themselves burned, which some people say it was burned or carved or painted on one of the temple walls that's still remaining now in those derelict buildings. Flower of Life many times. But more interestingly, and I'll show you a photograph of this next, before I show you the clip of the crop circle, I'll show you what is unique about the perimeter pattern, because it has something to do with this number here. I'm just wondering whether certain things have for some reason been put in biblical texts and other places as a reminder of something very important. Maybe it is to do with, like we are now pondering, that number 9, and it might even be as great as the fact that they knew back then, many thousands of years, that the universe or language was universal, and in that being universal there was also a binary code. Is it possible they knew about binary code back then? Well, from some of the research I've conducted, binary code isn't completely new to ourselves in this generation of technology. We apply it in things like I talked about with DVDs and CD players, but it seems binary language goes back many, many years. So let's have a look at some of the other things then that are relevant to this. This one probably will shock you more than any, but just remember the pattern, right? So we've got two outer cubes, if you like, one in the centre. We've got the cube, the corner of the cube missing. So let me just show you something, because I think you'll be surprised. Okay, so here's a photograph of a crop circle that was laid down on the 1st of August 2007 in Wiltshire in the UK. And you can see the cube in the centre, and again, like I said, it looks like the corner's missing off that 3D cube, so you can peer into the cube. Okay, the flower of life isn't in that cube that we're looking at, but some of the things that are very familiar with the picture that we was comparing, like for instance the 4 sets of triangular rings, right? Each set of those triangular rings make up a total number of 36, and 4 times 36 gives us that number 144. I find it more than a coincidence that, first of all, we're looking at a ring of triangles, cubes, something at the corner of the cube missing, and, obviously bringing our attention to that centre point. Let's have a look at another photograph. Just before we do, here's another crop circle. Again, a cube within a cube for some reason, and 37 lines around the inner cube. Sorry, 36 lines around the inner cube. Again, 3 plus 6 is 9, and there is the double cube, factor again in this one. So, I'm not saying, that somebody's trying to teach us something here, but, the geometry in all these shapes is very much the same. So there might be a message there for someone. Whether these are real crop circles, I mean, the people that took these photos swore that there was. They said that the crop had been bent over on the nodes of each, shoot in a way that it weren't broke. And, they say that that is one way of finding out whether this is, man-made or other. So I'm just putting it out there, guys. But we'll move on. So just very quickly, I know it's not very clear, but you can look up this yourself in Egypt, Abydos, the Temple of Osiris, and just type in the flower of life. You're going to see some probably better images than this, but I've enlarged it hopefully enough that it is just visible to you. You will see that around the flower of life pattern, they've put all these triangles. If you count the number of these triangles, you end up with 144. That's interesting. I think it's more than a coincidence. So I'll show you what that would look like, if it was completed and clear. So forget the fact that I've put these names on there. Obviously you can see what I've been trying to do. Obviously with regards to the Bible, these numbers and names are going to be relevant. But the important thing is, if we just removed the names from the outside, we would be left with, as you can see, if we joined up these red dots, we'd have one cube, and again, where the circles are in the center would be where we would remove that cube. But this is what the Abydos flare of life would have looked like, but without them names around the outer side. And as you can see, there's 144, and I've applied this in some research that I did a while ago with regards to the 12 tribes of Judah that make up the 144,000 that's talked about in the Bible. Like I say, there are some stark connections or coincidences with regards to the flower of life and a lot of what is talked about in Revelations with regards to numbers. And let's face it, they talk about something descending from the heavens as well, which I found was very interesting. They classified it as the bride, and it described the wall and the dimensions of this, and those dimensions would fit a cube-shaped object. So the next thing I think is the next image I'm going to show you is really going to bake your noodles, guys, because there's no way that man could have ever interfered in the shape of where this one comes from. So let's have a look at that. Now this next photo, like I say, is probably going to bake your noodle a little bit, because unlike all the others that could have possibly been man-made, we don't really know whether there was or there wasn't. We're not going to get into that argument right now, but this one definitely isn't man-made. This is NASA's photo of the North Pole on Saturn, and was taken by the Cassini spacecraft. And as you can see, it's forming a geometric pattern quite naturally, which is very similar to some of the recent photos that I've showed you. Now, geometry and that special number 9 does find its way in a lot of geometric patterns. The next video I'm going to quickly run through just gives you an idea of how frequently the number 9 turns up in these geometric patterns. And again, it's by no mistake that it does. So guys, as you can see from what I've showed and discussed in this video, there is no coincidence about the number 9 turning up in such an equation. In fact, all geometry, every shape, and not just every shape, but every frequency will relate to that single number, 9. And as the universal equation shows us, it will either come out with the binary code of 9s and 0s. You know guys, I've explored many possibilities of arrangements of numbers and patterns and frequencies. I've even, as I've showed you sometimes in videos, took frequencies and put them through liquid mercury and obtained these shapes by the frequencies altering. We can, get any geometry we want just by adding the frequency to it. And one thing which is fluent throughout our universe is frequency, is geometry, and this number 9. And we have this universal equation which always refines numbers down to 9 or zeros. It is a binary language, and there's a lot of work to do on this until we really fully understand what the zeros and 9s in the combinations actually mean. So I hope you've got something out of it, guys. The main thing which I wanted you to get was that our universe is conscious. It must be, because it is in its design going about it by an intelligent method. It is following a pattern, and it has been doing that for millions of years. And if it's intelligent and it's building by design, it must also be conscious, so bear that in mind. And there's nothing else really to add to this. There is lots of other combinations of numbers that I've put together to form patterns of geometry, and I'm convinced at the end of the day that we live in a very, very special universe, and none of it is simply, as some would say, coincidence. Our planet didn't just fall in its position to the sun by accident, and the moon likewise. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. As always, there's a link down there if you want to support the work. Remember, we do run an observatory on this channel, and with regards to those things, those magnetometers that we're building, we're just waiting for a couple of components now, and they'll be sent out, and we'll be collecting data on those. And if you want to support what we do on this channel, there's a link down there. You can support us on PayPal or Patreon. It's entirely up to you, and it's not mandatory either, guys, but it is nice when we all pull together and share and help each other. I hope you will agree on that, at least. And I'll say what I usually do. I hope you've enjoyed the contents of this video, and as always, I'll catch up with you in the week. Bye for now.